Has anyone here ever felt like you didn't belong? Yeah. I think all of us have at some point in our lives. And when that happens, it can feel scary to courageously show up as your true, authentic self. And it's pretty tempting to fit ourselves into a box of who we think we're supposed to be. Our brains, they're actually wired that way. Our brains are wired to see belonging as a strength and individualism as a threat to our survival. Back in the Stone Age, if we're all standing together as a group, we're less likely to get attacked by a tiger. But if you're standing here all alone, you just became dinner. And even today, when we're really not likely to get attacked by a tiger, our brains still recognize being different as something that can separate us from the pack, leaving us vulnerable. And if not vulnerable to attack, at least to ridicule and judgment. But what makes us different is the key to unlocking opportunities and possibilities. It just sometimes takes more courage to step outside that box and lead outside the lines. But it just might be the one thing that changes everything. See, when I was a captain, bright-eyed captain in the US Air Force, I was assigned as a director of operations at Air Force Basic Military Training. That's boot camp, for some of you that don't know. And even if you're not familiar with the military itself, you probably have some idea of what boot camp is like. You probably have some idea that it's hectic, regimented, in your face, and the bubbly, happy-go-lucky cheerleader that I still saw myself as from my college days didn't quite seem to fit this whole boot camp vibe. Now, don't get me wrong, I held my own, but I secretly wondered how long it was going to take someone to figure out I didn't know what I was doing. So, a year and a half into my assignment, when my commander called me into her office, I was pretty sure the gig was up. But as I stood there, listening to what she was saying, I was stunned. She wasn't getting rid of me. She was making me the commander of the field training flight. Like, what could possibly go wrong with this scenario? I mean, I already felt like I was out of my element, and I had never deployed. Our instructors who ran the field training flight, that was their job, to ensure that the 30,000 enlisted members who join the Air Force every year were ready for what they were about to face when they went into harm's way. I literally thought to myself as I'm standing in front of her, this woman's lost her mind. Like, there's no way this is going to go well. I do not belong here. Now, thankfully, I had enough wherewithal to not say that out loud, but I did ask her for some clarification. I said, ma'am, thank you, but can you help me understand why you're choosing me? I don't fit the mold, and I don't even have the technical expertise they do. I will never forget what she said to me. She said, Tina, I don't need a technical expert. I have 70 technical experts out there right now. I need someone who can mend relationships and take these instructors from where they are to where they need to be. That person is you. So I saluted smartly and decided to borrow her belief in me, because heaven knows I did not see it at this point. And I just decided to show up as courageously as I knew how. Turns out, I was actually going to need more courage than even I thought. Because Air Force Basic Training was about to go through its most robust overhaul of its curriculum in its history. This was right after the attacks of 9/11, and the world had changed. My team would play a pivotal role in restructuring the curriculum to make sure our airmen were prepared for the volatility and the uncertainty that they would face. I really was like, this is not going to go well. I just don't even know. I'm just going to show up. So when I did show up, I realized my senior management team, they were highly skeptical of me. They wondered if headquarters had brought me in to clean house. And it became pretty evident that there was already a deep mistrust of not just me, but of each other. So needless to say, our first attempt at redoing this curriculum, it was an utter disaster. Every time I asked them, how's the new design going? In my bubbly, chipper voice, they would show me parts and pieces, and they're like, yeah, it's everything's good, it's fine. But you know the feeling, right? I knew it wasn't. I just didn't know why. Until one day, my new superintendent, who had joined our team shortly after I did, he pulled me aside and he said, come walk with me, ma'am. So he walked me through the entire process that they had come up with, start to finish. And I began to see how disjointed it was. There was not enough time for our trainees to get from point A to point B, and it really started to look like they had just tweaked what we already had and rearranged it. That was not going to cut it. We needed something bold, and this was not it. So, as I pondered the possible outcomes, that's when I started to understand why I was in that position. You see, the part of me that felt that I didn't belong, it was the very part of me required to create change. I had a decision to make. We could press on and meet our deadline, knowing it was going to completely miss the mark, or I could ask for more time. And that might not seem like a hard decision given the circumstances, but here's the kicker. We were 1 week away from rolling out this new prototype across all of basic training. Every person had already restructured their schedule to accommodate it. So what I was about to do was going to cause a massively painful domino effect across a large institution. But I knew what was at stake, and I knew what I needed to do. So I stood in front of our senior leadership, and I owned my failure. See, I had not yet created the connection with our team where they felt safe to be honest with me. And that's my issue. I got to be responsible for that. So I asked our senior leaders, I need another month so we can get this right. They weren't happy, but they gave it to us anyway. So my superintendent and I, we gathered all of our senior managers and we said, hey, good news. We've got a second chance on one condition. You all have to show up all in. And all in meant the courage to be honest, even when it was uncomfortable. The courage to bring up new ideas and think differently. And the courage to set our egos aside. Once they knew that I'd mustered up some courage of my own, and I had not thrown them under the bus, they all decided, all in. So together, we created what the Air Force has used for the past 17 years at Air Force Basic Training. And what was so special about that moment of us coming together is for the first time, they shared with me that they hadn't felt that they could take risks, that they could think outside the box, that they could risk failing. We have a saying in the military, failure is not an option. We hear it a lot. And for the most part, it's true. But in this scenario, we needed to fail early in the design process so that our airmen did not fail later. When we finally came together, we questioned old assumptions. We threw out crazy ideas. We even questioned each other without worrying about rank or position. And because we had created that connection with each other, our airmen were ready for what they were about to face. Over the past 17 years, Air Force Basic Training has used the foundation we created to train 500,000 airmen who have gone on to create impact for millions around the world. Now, throughout all of our lives, we're all going to be faced with opportunities that challenge who we think we are and what we think we're capable of. Initially, for me, I wondered if my pom-poms and my combat boots could actually come together and coexist. And it turns out leveraging both and staying true to who I am, it's kind of my secret weapon. And it is yours too. My challenge for each of us is to show up courageously as your true, authentic self, especially when you feel like you don't belong. Because when we lead with courageous authenticity, we create opportunities for others to do the same. And we unlock possibilities and elevate lives. That is what it means to lead outside the lines.